guess I should have already done this by now. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I'm going to talk to you about some of the books that I have loved reading in 2021 so far. We're just going to look at January to June and then I'm going to go maybe July to December at the end of the year. Maybe just do like a full books that I've loved throughout the year. But these are the ones that I have loved reading so far. It's not all going to be 2021 releases. The majority of them are, and the majority of them I've actually read through NetGalley, but there are a couple of them that are from before 2021. These books are in no particular order. It's probably just chronologically from the time that I read them. So let's take a look at what they were. Starting off the list is The Henner Wars by Adiba Jagir. I read this one back in January and I absolutely fell in love with it. In this book, you are following Nishat, who is going into transition year, which is a year in Ireland in school where it's not very much academically focused. It's more focused on kind of personal growth, development, that kind of thing. And in TY, which is a short for transition year, you often do something called a mini company where you set up a company to try and raise funds. And often there's like a competition that's connected with this. So Nishat enters this competition with the business idea that she's going to do henna tattoos. She's been doing them for quite a long time. She's Bangladeshi and she lives in Ireland at the moment, so it's a definite, very strong part of her culture. However, there's a new girl who has just started in her school called Flavia, who comes from South America, and she also decides that she's going to do henna as her transition year mini project. And that kind of sparks a rivalry between the two girls because Nisha definitely sees this as cultural appropriation of her own culture. And I definitely agree with that. It's probably not something that I would have loved when I was back in transition year. I did feel like this book was really realistic to the culture that it shows. It doesn't just show Bangladeshi culture, which I don't have a lot of experience with, but it also shows what it's like growing up in Ireland, specifically growing up in Dublin, which I didn't do. But I did love seeing all of these things that I know about from having grown up in Ireland, all of these places that I know about from having lived in Dublin and studied in Dublin when I was in college. Books that are set in Ireland are really connective to me because, as I've said, it's something that I know about. It's something that I'm familiar with. I am so excited to see what Adiba does next. I know that she's got a couple of books that are coming out and she's definitely working on some more stuff. But I am so hooked on what she's doing. Next up is The Roommate by Rosie Dannon. And I had expected something of this. I knew a couple of people who had read it already and told me that it was significantly steamy. And that's something that I really enjoy in books. So when I went into it, I was fully ready for this. But I don't think I was ready for how much I would enjoy it, but also how significantly steamy it actually is. In this book, we're following Clara and Josh. And Clara grew up in this very kind of upper middle class, very rich, very kind of sticks to the rules and regulations family in New York. She heads to Los Angeles to live with a guy that she's had feelings for a really long time. But it turns out that he has actually skipped the city and he's put the ad on Craigslist, so there's going to be somebody else new living with her. The new guy living with her is Josh, and she doesn't know a whole lot about him. But it turns out that he is an adult entertainer. I'm not really a fan of like the Madonna versus Playboy trope that you often see in romance books, but I really thought that it was done well here. I never felt like Clara was being singled out by anybody that she knew because she wasn't as sexually experienced as Josh and his friends were. There was a kind of a situation where they were playing, I think it was like Spin the Bottle or Truth or Dare or something, and you could definitely see that Clara was a couple of rings down the ladder than everybody else, but it was never really made a big deal out of. I will also say that I completely agree with the levels of steam. It was phenomenally well done and it was really well written, especially when you're talking about there's a whole level of experience between Clara and Josh and what they are familiar with when it comes to being in the bedroom. I felt like this book was so well written. I already have a copy of the sequel, The Intimacy Experiment, which follows Naomi, one of Josh's friends from work, and I cannot wait to get started with it. Next up is a kind of a swerve from what I usually read, in that it's a kind of a play, a parody, a retelling of some sorts, and it is Much Ado About Mean Girls by Ian Docher. You might be familiar with some of the terms in the title, so let me explain what this is. This book is the film Mean Girls, written in classic Shakespearean form, and the title is kind of a play on Much Ado About Nothing. I listened to this as an audiobook, and I would definitely recommend that because I had the film playing in my head the entire time. I was picturing the scenes as I was hearing them, and the dialogue isn't too unfamiliar. So it is written a little bit in Shakespearean form, of course, but it isn't so unfamiliar that you don't grasp what's going on. It also did have quite a lot of the stage directions in it, which helped you to realize who's coming into the scene, who's going out of the scene, where are they standing, all of that thing. I would absolutely love to go and see this performed. I feel like plays need to be experienced in person, live in front of you, and I would definitely love to see a play of this one because I think it would genuinely be chaos, but the best form of chaos. The next book that I read in 2021 that I genuinely was blown away by and didn't really expect to love as much as I did was Circle of Friends by Maeve Binchy. I had heard so many people that I know absolutely raving about Maeve's books. I've listened to tons of podcast episodes with other authors that I know of and that I admire, loving Maeve Binchy stuff. So I knew I was going to go in and enjoy it, but I don't think I was expecting to enjoy it this much. In Circle of Friends, you are following Benny and Eve, who you start out the book when they're 10 years old and they're just meeting in the classroom. But then you jump forward about 10 years and Eve and Benny are 18 and Eve is about to leave town for university. The two girls grew up in Knocklen, which is a fictional suburb of Dublin City, and Eve goes into Dublin City to attend university for her first time ever away from home. But the first day that she's in the city, she is a witness and kind of involved in a horrific accident that takes the lives of one of their fellow students. This kind of brings Eve a lot closer to some of the other people that had been around the area when the accident happened, but also it somehow gives Benny the opportunity to attend university, which she wouldn't have had without all of this happening. So she is also catapulted into this brand new world. There is a pretty huge cast of characters in here, and there's so much happening to quite a lot of them. Even though this book was written in 1990 and it's set in like the 1950s, 1960s, it feels pretty timeless. It feels like anything that had happened to the students here could have happened at any time in the last 10 or 15 years or so. There are a couple of things that you wouldn't have had happened now, but overall, this book feels like it could have been written and set anytime in the last 5 or 10 years. I know that I have so many other Maeve Binchy books that I can look forward to, so if you have any suggestions on where I should start, please do let me know, because I am very excited to dive into this pool. A new book by one of my favourite authors that I enjoyed in 2021 was Last Night, or sometimes called Just Last Night, by Vary McFarlane. Something that I love about this book is that it features a quiz at the start of it, and that is just me being a bit of a general knowledge nerd. I absolutely love a pub quiz. I love watching like Pointless or The Chase. I love kind of general knowledge stuff like that, so seeing that at the start of the book was such a pull-in factor for me. This book follows a group of friends who've known each other since they were younger. And our main character, Evie, is good friends with all of them, but she's had a kind of a romantic tryst with Ed, who is also one of the members of the group that didn't really go anywhere when they were younger. I think they kind of hooked up once or twice and then everything fell apart, except that he had found somebody else and that now he and this new girl are really trying to give it a go and they are planning their wedding. On the way home from the quiz at the very start of the novel, one of the group, Susie, is hit by a car and passes away. And that flips the whole book on its head. You have everybody trying to deal with this unexpected loss and very unexpected death of their friend, how they're coping with that, and also having to get in touch with her estranged brother who's living in the US, hasn't been in touch with the family, hasn't really been back home recently, and everybody kind of sees him as a bit of an arse. Evie is very much aware that it's not the thing that Susie would have wanted to have him back home for it, but that it's kind of the right thing to do. And because they haven't seen each other in such a long time, Evie and Finley, who is Susie's brother, kind of spark up a little bit of something. A debut novel that I genuinely enjoyed so much in 2021 was The Summer Job by Lizzie Dent. I've mentioned it a couple of times here, but genuinely I fell head over heels with this book. So you're following Birdie, who moves to a hotel in the Scottish Highlands to take on the job of sommelier in a brand new hotel that has just opened. And she's expecting to go, and it's going to be a little bit kind of a run-down place, needs a lot of TLC, but it's actually a 4-star, really high-end establishment. This is slightly problematic for Birdie because she's not actually a sommelier. She is taking over for her friend Heather and pretending to be her friend Heather, who has gone off to Italy with her brand new love and is really trying to give her relationship a go. You're then following Birdie, who's really trying to pull the wool over her new employer's eyes, and she's also trying to build some relationships and rapport with her co-workers while having absolutely no idea what she's doing. If the Scottish Highlands was ever on your travel bucket list, you definitely need to read this one. There are a couple of road trips that Birdie makes with James, one of the employees in the hotel, and the descriptions of the Scottish Highlands will genuinely make you feel like you're already there. You know you're onto a winner when you finish a book in one setting. And I finished A Keeper by Graham Norton in one setting. I think I finished it in about an hour and a half on some sprints with a couple of friends of mine. I did not expect to love this book as much as I did. I genuinely could not put it down in the times that we weren't reading, but actually interacting with the viewers. In this book, you're following Elizabeth, who has come back from New York to mourn her mother's passing and also to kind of get all the affairs in order, get the house cleaned up and ready for resale after her mother's funeral and everything has been finished. While she's cleaning up the house, she finds some love letters between her mother and a man who is potentially her father. And then a dual timeline starts. You go back to when Elizabeth's mother met her father, who Elizabeth had never met. Elizabeth had no idea who this man was. And you're starting to realize things about this relationship that aren't quite what they should have been or what they seemed. And there's also an outside influence into this relationship that's making it pretty dangerous to be in. And so the final book that was a highlight for me in my reading time from January to June of this year was You and Me on Vacation by Emily Henry. I read Emily Henry's adult romance debut, Beach Reads, last year, and I absolutely fell in love with it. So to say that I had high expectations for this book is putting it kind of bluntly. In this book, you're following Poppy and Alex, who have been really good friends for about 10 years and had always gone on a holiday together, kind of taking time out to be with each other because they don't see each other quite a lot due to their jobs and where they're living. However, 2 years before the start of the action in this book, something happened between the two of them. There's a huge fallout and they haven't spoken since. Poppy works as a travel writer and she is sent on assignment to Palm Springs in California, which coincidentally is also where one of Alex's brothers is getting married. So the two of them then decide to go for a one last hurrah, make or break holiday. If they can't patch things up, then they're just going to leave everything to the wayside. But if they can patch it up, great, and they're going to continue to see each other in this same vein again. Of course, things start to happen between the two. This book also has a dual timeline, so we're kind of starting at one of Alex and Poppy's earliest holidays, and then we're going forward in time a little bit until you realise what happened 2 years ago. It's a really great journey to get there, and also you're seeing so many wonderful areas of the world. If you haven't been able to go on a holiday this year, this book is definitely for you. Those were some of the books that I have really enjoyed this year so far. Have you read any of them, or what was your favourite book from the last 6 months? Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.